Just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of background. Of course, this is Fort Worth's version of our big event for this year. Of course, May 15th, we had quite a few things going on, but kind of wanted to take you through what we know and what we kind of learned. And through this, I'm not going to take a whole heck of a lot of time, but we just want to kind of give you an idea of the flow of the information through social media as we define it back on May 15th. And just a few disclaimers throughout the presentation. This is the Fort Worth WFO perspective only, but basically to us, social media is all three of these things and then some. Not only Twitter, not only Facebook, but NWS chat really comes into play as well, because any of these things can really increase the message that we're trying to get with our partners and internal, and we're really trying to get this out and get it going exponentially. So that's one of the things that we really like to do. A little bit of a background on May 15th. You're probably a little bit more familiar with Rick's case, but for us, well, we had 18 tornadoes. They started about 5:33, ended about 12:12 a.m. Now, to me, at least, that's an about. I'm such a geek, I know the exact times, but that's pretty much when we had it. One EF4, one EF3, a bunch of EF1s, and a bunch more EF0s. We did have 6 fatalities. We had about 50 or a little bit more than that injured, still trying to come up with the final number there. But 6 fatalities. These were our first fatalities in the Dallas-Fort Worth WFO since 2006, so definitely a big deal for us. Our social media philosophy, not only on this day, but something we've been working on for years, it comes down to that statement right there. Tell them what you know. Whatever way you can get it, whatever method, means, basically just tell people what you know, when you know it, but have a game plan to come into play. So before the event, this was on the day of May 15th, we have our tweet starting about 5:41 in the morning, and it showed to around 8:50. A couple of things to really point out, definitely showing the chances for severe weather coming back up, and it was pretty much right in this area just to the west and northwest, and eventually down to the southwest of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Basically, get ready for the storms. You know, we've got some storms this morning. They're going to move away, and then by 2:05, we kind of expect that things to start pop up. But even before that, around 8:50, you know, we had kind of historical perspective. You know, it had been a long time since any kind of tornado in our area, and we just kind of wanted to remind people that, hey, these things have happened before, but the main message here was be prepared and just watch closely the weather forecast for the remainder of the day, because that was really what we wanted to get through. During the event, well, this thing turned more from expecting a few hailers and maybe 1 or 2 tornadoes to holy blank, this is really going to be the real thing. And that's when we kind of moved into the this is the real thing type of instance. And at this point, we were tweeting, we were putting out Facebook messages, and we were chatting basically like crazy. So that was pretty much our message. This is the real thing. You've got to take it seriously, and you need to take cover when appropriate. This next chart is kind of funky, but basically what I went through and has grabbed all of our social media posts on Facebook and on Twitter, and I broke them down into about 10-minute chunks. So if we had one post for 10 minutes, I've got it here on the line there, that was the orange is the Twitter, the black is in Facebook. This chart basically comes down to before the event, we did a lot on Facebook, we did a few posts on Twitter, but that was about it. And then once the event really started to come into play, we were putting out tweets about once every minute. We peaked out about 7 messages every 10 minutes, and that lasted from about 7 o'clock to around 8:40. These were coinciding with the times of our biggest tornadoes, including the fatality-producing tornado down in Granbury, and our own version of, you know, merely a mile-wide tornado that was heading toward Cleburne. That would have been right there around 8:20 or so. So we were putting out basically a post a minute, maybe a little bit less than that, during the time when everything was going on. At the same time, our Facebook post kind of slowed down, but that's something that's been very consistent with a lot of these training sessions have been. You know, the Twitter is more for the ADD, and then the Facebook is more of getting the message out but fast-moving information was really coming out through Twitter by about that time. So how did we do it? Well, this is our operations area about 9 o'clock, and I know what some of you guys are thinking, and it's holy cow, that's a bunch of people out there, but the people in the little no symbols there, I want you to ignore them because those really aren't NWS employees. So if we take them away, what we've got is the day shift that had worked from 8 to 4, and this was around 9 o'clock or so. He was just getting ready to go home. We've got a couple of student volunteers and some shadowing that just happened to pick May 15th as a day to be here. Pretty good day to be there. And, of course, we've got a bunch of people on the right to be a ham support. So in the meantime, on the left, we've got our routine. We've got a public service desk. We actually had 2 people here on the public service side, and that was because we had one of our interns had only been on duty for about 2 weeks, so we really wanted to kind of give her some help and just kind of have some backup. So right there in the middle, we've got somebody on NWS chat. We've got sectorized warning decision-making going on here, and we've got a social media presence right over here. And yes, we do dedicate one person to social media whenever possible and one person over here to NWS chat, because we pretty much think that that is the best way to get the message out, at least the way it works for our office. You have some incredibly dork right there in the middle who's acting like a coordinator. Doesn't look like he's doing much, but this was definitely one of those all-hands-on-deck days. In this case, our coordinator, he was listening to, interpreting all the conversations going on, and basically delegating what was going to go out on chat, on Twitter, on Facebook. And in this case, we've got our social media person typing fast and furious. We've got Hootsuite up, and essentially what would come into the ears of me or whoever else would find something that's a nugget we really wanted to get out, well, we would send it out through Facebook and or Twitter, and we would send it back out in NWS chat pretty much at the same time. We probably ended up with about 3 to 1 messages on NWS chat that we did on Twitter and on Facebook, but pretty much we saw the entire thing going out. And at this point, we're pretty much leading the conversation because, as you can see here, well, we've got Channel 5 that kind of got blanked out there for a second, but we've got the other 3 stations on air and pretty much saying more or less what we like them to say, or at least trying to lead the message that way. After the event, this is where we really started to come into play. The philosophy is still the same. Tell them what you know, and at least in my perspective, and I'm not even going to give this one and blame Bradshaw, this one is me. To me, this is just as or more important as during the event itself, because we went out, we started tweeting very early in the morning, 4:27. We put out, hey, we got our surveys planned. TV Mets went on in the air at 4. Of course, they were talking about that at 4:30 or so. And then we've got a bunch of other things going on, including this one here about 10:14, preliminary report from damage survey team down in Hood County, where we definitely found the EF4 damage. So this was one of those things where in the past we would mainly wait until late in the day before we really had everything finalized and get the message out. But this is one of those things that it kind of came up into the why wait category, because when we saw that picture of a couple of slabs down at Granbury and a lot of more damage going on, this is where the message really started to get out, and we essentially looked at this as a kind of a teachable moment. But the philosophy back at the office was definitely the same. This is Greg Patrick, our Sioux. Best picture I could find from him, plus he's not here, so he's going to kill me for this later. As these pictures came in, well, they all kind of went through Greg or whoever else was there at the time. We were using the DAT software, and as he would see these, he would just fire it right back out. So the philosophy was pretty much the same. Tell people what you know, and whenever you know it. There's no real reason to wait, at least for any amount of time. Not only did this help the media because it had a continuous flow of information, it definitely helped the EM community because we had all sorts of data coming back in, and we were giving them the same information as we were sending out to the world. In fact, that was one of the big lessons learned is, don't send it out before you tell the EM, but we kind of learned that one a few years ago. And it helps us all. And a little props to Rick and the folks up at Norman, because This was one of my favorite tweets on the 16th of May. And again, it was a teachable moment. If we said the tornado would hit in 26 minutes, what would you do? Get people thinking. And that way it really helps us all, because after all, the next time this stuff comes around, we want people to be ready, or at least as ready as they possibly can be. Now, you cannot do this, however, willy-nilly. You can't just tweet at random or in a vacuum, because we had 3 crews at this time, all out at different areas with some pretty major damage. So it really took that one person, one crew clearinghouse. And definitely don't tell the media or tweet about it before you talk to the EMs. That's one of those things that they really want to know first of all, plus they can let their elected officials know. That way a county judge, mayor, senator is not going to hear this stuff on the media. They're going to hear it directly from us. And another thing that we found is really the more you tell, the less you answer. And I'm going to kind of compare our last 2 big events. We had April 3rd of 2012. We had May 15th of this year. 17 tornadoes last year, 18 tornadoes this year, 1 in the Metroplex, 1 close enough. It's decent enough to kind of take a look at. Last April we had Facebook but not Twitter. This year we had them both. Last year I went back, looked at the phone logs and noise and the media phone calls for the day of the event, plus the 2 that take into account the storm surveys. We had 101 phone calls. This year, only 80. This was day 1 plus 2, and on May 17th, we actually had 2 additional tornadoes, so that even throws that number off just a little bit more. So less phone calls, more reports. Public severe reports last year, only 50. This year, thanks to Twitter, social media, and everything else, we actually had more reports, less phone calls. I think it came out pretty well. Of course, that does come out with a disclaimer. Not all severe weather events are alike, blah, 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 blah. And the worse the weather, of course, the more your followers. The top line there in black is our Facebook fans. Definitely took a jump on or about May 14th and 15th and continued to go up. Our Twitter fans did pretty much the same thing as well. Daily new likes, quite a bit actually, up there around May 15th and 14th. We actually had a few more likes on the 14th talking about the potential for the 15th than we did on the day after, and then 466 on the 16th, and then something happened up in Moore, and whoa, 2,900 new followers for that day. So no big deal. Likes are really not the biggest way to see exactly what's being used and all that. So I looked at the Facebook daily viral reach stats, and their viral reach, well, that's their definition right down there. Feel free to read that if you're really, really bored. But our viral reach actually gained strength on the day after the tornadoes. This is when we were posting furiously about the damage and using that as a teachable moment. So definitely when a lot of people were watching, this was the time we really wanted to get everybody's attention, show them what the damage can do, talk about some safety tips, talk about whatever we can, because this is where our audience was at around 450,000 people reached. We did not make everybody happy. Daily unlikes actually peaked around on the 15th. So definitely a little bit of that when we are giving out all sorts of information. Facebook fans started to go away just a little bit, did the same thing the day after more. It's just part of the territory. So some people we got to, some people we didn't. That's fine. The general trend is definitely upward. But, we mentioned the Facebook and Twitter. We've got quite a few fans, about 40,000 or so on Facebook and Twitter. But one of the things that we've really tried to strive for is not to think about this as social media, because at least in our markets, we've got 8 markets here, television. That's 2.9 million televisions. So it's Facebook, Twitter, and chat. That's where we can really lead the conversation, because the TV Mets have the Twitter accounts as well. So this is where our opportunity is to tell people what we know, not only in the traditional social media, but the real media as well. NWS Chat, that's where we can really lead the conversation, putting all 3 of these things together and not using one or the other in a vacuum, but when it comes down to it, everything really starts to come into play. Essentially, it comes down to tell them what you know whenever you know it. We do dedicate a social media position in order to communicate effectively, and our philosophy really comes down to that third bullet there. I mean, in the absence of any kind of official information, people are going to make up their own. So let's go ahead and tell them what we know, tell them what we think, tell them when we know it and all that, and definitely use those media partnerships to get the word out. That's Facebook, Twitter, NWS chat, phone calls, any way possible that we can. Our goal is to really create the message and get that out and about so everybody can be informed. And that's pretty much what I've got. I'll take this time for any kind of questions, comments, and any kind of insults you might want to throw my way. But you name it. But, Tim, I'll throw it back to you for questions.
Thanks. Hey, Mark, there was one question on Twitter. Did you guys link your Twitter and your Facebook so that the same message went to both platforms at the same time?
We use Hootsuite, so there were times where we would type out the message and we would make a decision. That goes to Twitter, that goes to Facebook, that goes to both. And It was just a simple thing of unclicking the Twitter or unclicking the Facebook for most of those times.
Hey, Mark.
Yep.
This is Eric in Binghamton. We may have missed the very, very beginning, so this may have answered the question, but you said something when you showed the picture of your Sioux, and you mentioned DAT. What's DAT?
That is the Damage Assessment Toolkit.
Oh, okay.
That, if you're not using that, probably should be. There's been some back and forth on the WCM forum on that one, but we find that to be incredibly helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, basically, Eric, what it is it's a program that you can run on a tablet or a laptop. You take it out into the field. It knows it has GPS, so it follows you around, and it syncs up with a GIS server so that your pictures and any information you enter is immediately relayed back to the office in real time and with the correct location and time and all that stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mark, Jim in Birmingham.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I've noticed over the years, and having worked in Fort Worth, that we're seeing that the amateur radio reports are becoming less and less. In fact, a lot of the amateur radio reports are basically people who are just keeping up with social media, not coming in. And we're actually thinking about changing the philosophy. We're actually thinking about trying to use our hams to help us monitor the plethora of information coming in through social media. And was wondering if you had any thoughts about that, or if you're still getting a lot of reports coming in from amateur radio.
We're still getting quite a few reports in from amateur radio. We've kind of thought about that plan of having them do the social media as well, but it's almost overwhelming at times with them trying to get a subset of 20-some counties usually. I'm not sure that would work in our current environment. So we get enough use out of the amateur radio folks that they are really earning their pay over there.
Hey, Mark.
Yep.
This is Ken in Wichita. The question I had was on your image at the 9 p.m. and you showed your staff there. I was wondering how many NWS staff members did you have on at that time?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 with 2 public service.
Okay. And how many radar operators you have there? 2?
9. But we had primarily these 2 right here.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
Hey, Jim, this is Tom Bradshaw. I want to go back to the comment that you made. I think you actually bring up a good point, and indeed, I think it's a big challenge for us to. Obviously, Mark's talking about how we disseminated information via social media regarding what we knew, but I think one of the challenges for us is how we're able to effectively monitor social media, because obviously there's several large hashtag groups that we're following at any one time, and there's there's a lot of content out there, and I'm not sure that we've got that figured out as far as how we dedicate somebody, how we find the resources to monitor that information. So you're suggesting using your hands, and that's, I think regardless of where you go, I think that's certainly something that we've got to do a better job of figuring out.
Yeah, well, thanks, Tom. I mean, yeah, amateur radio in Alabama is a lot different than over there. I mean, I know that, but yeah, I mean, we're polling the TV folks, and even they're saying they're overwhelmed. They can't keep up with all the information that's coming into their studios, and yeah, that's what we're struggling with right now during severe weather is how to keep track of the information, because there's a lot of great stuff out there, but a lot of times you don't even get it. You're not sure what it is.
Hey, Mark,
this is Lauren over in New York City.
TXWX or FWD or a combination of both?
Say again, please.
Which hashtags did you use for Twitter?
Let's see. We use DFW Weather, DFWWX, and FWD Spotter, and then the generic TXWX, which gets you everything from El Paso to Brownsville to here. But DFWWX is the big one for us. There was another question in there?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, I got a question. This is Steve in Milwaukee. When using Facebook during an event, is it better to post new posts every time you make a comment, or is it better to start, say, make one post and then just have that conversation going through the event, meaning you're just adding to the comment section? Which way do you think is better?
That's a good question. I don't know, Tim, can you have a better answer for that than I would? I would say
okay.
new, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm just I haven't really thought about it, but off the top of my head, I would say if you make a post saying a thunderstorm's approaching a town and a conversation develops about that, I think you keep going on that. But if you have another storm that you want to post about, I think you would, of course, start a new conversation. I know that Fort Worth did a great job in updating. They had new posts for as the storms approached the town. So I think, Mark, that's what you guys were doing, was you put a timestamp and then you put a radar picture as the storms are approaching certain localities. I'm not sure exactly what the best philosophy is. I know that if you cut down on the post, that might make some people happy, but at the same time, it might get your more important information might get lost.
Yeah, that's my concern. I was just thinking if you make too many posts, then you get people probably more annoyed and in some cases just unliking the page because they don't like the traffic.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
I'm not sure what the answer is there. I guess try it out and see what your particular fans like.
Okay. Thanks.
That's a great question. I hadn't thought about that either, but that's a good one.